The only time I believe I ever worked in life was when I had to navigate personalities in the building. That's work.
Yeah.
And I experienced that at Georgia Tech and Alabama, a little bit, but in the pro football, it's constant. You have to navigate because there's so many people. I realize as a coach, you are always between you and two other people, at least. If you're a coach, you're caught between the coordinator and the head coach. And the head coach is caught between the owner and the general manager. So everybody's caught between everybody except the owner. Yeah. So I go like, I want to, control I want my final say of myself. And so I went to Buffalo, and it was really interesting. I was at Cleveland and had a bad year at Cleveland just because they always kept thinking I lived in LA. But I was living in my area in Dallas. I mean, and I didn't have a ground line, and I had a cell phone, and that was when cell phones first came out. It was going like, so they never believed that I was where I was. It just was weird. This is what I said: if you guys are willing to pay for a ground line in my apartment in Dallas, and tolerate me not answering that ground line. If you're willing to pay for that service, put that phone in. And I said, but let me tell you this. When my mother wants to reach me, she uses this cell phone and my pager. And that was the end of it. But I just had a bad personality conflict with too many people at the time. Just didn't work out. But anyway, they called me up on
It's so funny to think that a situation as simple as a question about a phone and a line could cause enough that to not have a business relationship work out like that. Like just their lack of understanding. It just seems silly.
Well, I think it was deeper than that because it was kind of a trust thing. Because I asked, could I do my job from LA? And they're like, no, you need to live in your area. And, I'm single. I can live anywhere I want to live, do what I want to do. I don't, why do I need to, be anywhere? So it was just that trust thing. And I was just, I am the way I am. I'm sorry, but I am.
Well, I could vouch for when you came to Buffalo. You were really there in Buffalo every day. Not only when I don't know that anyone stayed later in their offices. In fact, in gratuitous plug about the book, when I talked to you about 06, you were there so late that you ended up getting stuck in your office for 2 nights.
Oh, yeah, that was my first real big snowstorm there.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome.
My first snowstorm, and Chuck Lester kept saying, okay, the forecast says we've got the snow coming in, flurries coming in at 4. It's going to start coming down hard about 6. He says at 9 o'clock you ought to be out of here. So Chuck kept coming by giving me the report. So I go like, oh, God, I can drive in snow, man. And, I can handle this. I live in New York City. I was an exchange student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I can handle this. So I didn't pay attention. So I go out there about 10 o'clock to get going, and I could not find my car. Between the snow falling from the sky and the snow drifts off the roof of the building, I could not find my car. So I slept there in the building for 2 nights.
Can you maybe tell people that are listening what the director of pro player personnel does, and kind of like the duties, and maybe just walk people through what that entails and how deeply involved you were in the decision making process, like on a day-to-day.
All right, here's one of the best kept secrets in all of pro football. And if you can tell me this right now, you're on top of it. One of the best kept secrets in football is who's in charge of the game day roster, who's in charge of the final cuts, who's in charge of the roster period.
Pro player personnel director.
No, it's not.
Oh, no. I thought you were leading me there. Well, the head coach usually would be the head coach, right?
No, it's not. You just there it
Did
is. You can go through the directory and you can check, and nobody can tell you. I mean, some people will say, but it's that thing because I always say the first pick of the draft belongs to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
If he's done his homework, and usually they don't. To an extent they're aware, but they don't know enough of. No, I'm not profiling them, but it's the fact. I mean, they're not technical football people. But anyway, so pro personnel, I can tell you this: what our responsibility was to make sure we get put a staff together. You're in charge of your staff. We evaluate practice. We go to practice. Some of us do. Some of us don't. We evaluate all the players every season in the National Football League. So we go through and we divide the league up by conferences and divisions, and we kind of work within that, and we accumulate all the information, evaluations, all the stats. We put a book together at the end of the year. We have to evaluate our own team every day, every week, every game, and that year. We compile all that. I mean, every statistical, to the fact that what they weighed week 1 versus the last week of week 17 or 16 then or whatever it was. So we evaluate. We also did advanced scouting, where we would scout our opponents up to 3 games prior to our playing them. We had to do reports. We had to take these evaluations and put them in the computer, and we have to compare and evaluate positions throughout the league and compare our present players with the league. We are responsible for bringing players in for workouts. We're knowing who's available. We evaluate the waiver wire every day to see who's available and what's going on in the league. We also keep up with rumors, what people are saying and what could happen. And because, every team has insiders, and so have workouts. And one thing I can say, in the history of the National Football League, we had the largest workout in the history of the National Football League. We had 186 guys that were on the streets in for a workout.
They paid for that, right? They paid it on their own, most of them.
Well, I worked it out.
Yeah, you worked it
out. You had
with agents, right? Yeah.
If they had a, as a job of an agent is to get your players workouts.
Yeah.
So if a guy I was always friendly but hard on agents. If you got bad talent, then don't call me till you get somebody. But if you needed to get your guy worked out, well, we figure out a way. Maybe you pay for their hotel, and we feed them, or we pay their transportation. You put them up, but it was always something that we worked out with the agent. Not showing any favoritism anyway, but our deciding factor was where the college scouts had put a grade on the player. If they had a draftable grade or a high preferred free agent type grade on them, then we gave them a look. So that was, we never really did much in the draft. Now, for me, when Tom Donahoe was a GM, I would look at certain groups. Like he'd say, I want you to evaluate, the top 12 safeties or tight ends or whatever. He would give me stuff to do that way, but little projects.
What I recall, your office, one of the things I remember is someone who spent a lot of time in your office, and Josh, you'll remember this because AJ Smith was there and it was similar, but your wall, you literally you couldn't see a square inch of your wall that didn't have a name of an NFL player on it, literally by team, what their category was, what maybe it was some kind of subjective ranking or number system. And you followed that. And then you said what always, and now as in the NFL this week is in free agency, what always amazed me too is I was always just ready to execute a contract, hopefully, when we were going to sign a guy. But
Right.
the players we had in, you certainly knew who the free agents were going to be, but there were always guys that you brought in that weren't free agents, but you somehow, going back to what you said about rumors, anticipated when a team might be likely to let a guy go to be a salary cap casualty or whatever. And I was always so impressed how all over that you and your staff were.
Well, yeah. Well, every year there was, one of the staff guys, and usually it was the younger guys, would come in, and that's their job every day. Get the board right, adjust the names, pull them down. If they go to a new team, get a new card printed up with the logo on it and place it under that team. That was, every day we did that. Somebody did it. So, yeah.
Did you when you were evaluating like this week, free agency week, whatever, when there was like the team meetings, the strategy sessions, the planning for the off season, how much input did you have on like the overall direction of where the team was going, and how often did you pound the table for a guy, either pro or con, to come to Buffalo? Either you were really for it or really against it.
All right. What our staff did was, at the conclusion of the last game of the season, each coach, general manager, owner got a list by position. We hand it, and the coordinator would get the full roster of their side of the ball. So that starts. So when we get to the meetings, the coaches would have had to do reports. And it's really tough this time of year. The coaches are evaluating draft eligible players, that's what they're doing. And they've concluded their own assessments of their team. And at the same time, they have to do reports by their position. But when you get to the meeting part, we give our reports. I don't know that we pounded the table like the college people do. By that time, the position coach would have had his report written in the computer, and we all have our assessments of it, and we give the reports, and it's all based on needs and dollars and cents and how it fits. So
Yeah.
I don't know that, and if you go back and if you really check, I think personally, and I think it's a fact, I think 98% of the guys we brought in free agency to the Buffalo Bills were productive.
Yeah.
Go back. I take pride in that we did a good job.
You did, John. We had Kavika Mitchell on a few weeks ago, and he in 2007 he had just come off being an integral part of the Giants team that won the Super Bowl. Really kind of shocked the world, beating the Patriots, who were undefeated. And he said that this gets us into kind of free agency week and when it's showtime and the visits are happening. But he wanted to stay there, but they surprisingly didn't show much interest in him, and he felt kind of hurt. And what ultimately had him decide to come to Buffalo was he just said he felt wanted. And I remember that the preparation for that week. We talked about this on the phone the other day, and I've talked about this before about little things like you just were insistent on making sure the building was ready and everyone was ready. And what were some of the things that you remember? And the other thing I want to talk about too is going back to the meetings with the position coaches and the dollars and cents. I would remember being in some of those meetings, and there was a spreadsheet, whether it was Jeff Littman or Jim, and they would show, okay, if we sign this guy, boom, here goes the money. We got the player. But then the same amount is how much less we have to spend, how much less cap room. And that means that you're probably going to get your guy, but you and you running backs, DB, you're sorry. You might have to wait for the draft. But anyway, preparing the building and making sure you want to letting players know that they're wanted. And it was something that you were definitely adamant about.
Well, I kind of got that from Tom Donahoe. See, most people don't realize this. Tom Donahoe walked the building every morning. He physically walked the building. If there was paper or something out of place, he did that. And it's like when you have free agency, there are visitors coming to visit you, and they're comparing you to other teams, and so we kind of made sure that everybody in all the departments knew that we had people coming in, and as and usually the people at the head of those departments knew that we had people coming in, and but the building was respectable most times, all the times. I can't remember maybe one time that it wasn't, but that was kind of preparing and just making people are saying things. We want you, we need you, and the right things, and that's the whole thing. Just I never forget we had Tequil Spikes and Sam Adams. They came in kind of an overlapping deal.
Mm-hmm.
Tequil came in, he got his deal done, and Sam came in at the tail end. And Big Sam was sitting at the table, and in the conference room, he's in there by himself, and Tequil just got his deal done, and Sam hits the table with his big hand and goes like, boom! It's time for Big Sam to get paid. It was just funny how that happened, It's Big Sam's time now. It was funny.
I would listen.
Did you did you ever have trouble? Did Buffalo have a reputation of some guys just didn't want to come here because of the weather, the taxes? We hear about that now. I know some of the current players are complaining about New York State taxes. Did you feel like you had an uphill battle to get some guys to even consider Buffalo?
No, because I think that I think for the most part, I think that we did better than decent. We selected guys that fit. I think that our research, there may be guys that came in that didn't, come, yeah, but we had help me, I can see his face, running back from Jacksonville, help me. Went to the Pace.
I wish we were live. We'd have fans would know it right away.
Not Fred Taylor.
I can't, but to this day, he's one of my favorite guys.
Fred Taylor.
Fred Taylor.
Oh, good call.
He came in, and God, we needed him. And I really I love the person, and when he came down, he says, I want a chance to win a championship ring, and he went to the Patriots. But and to this day, when I see him, we still, God, I wanted to come to Buffalo, but I thought that was my best chance. And so you got to that in free agency is probably, other than money or whatever, is a real factor. I haven't had a chance to win a ring, but this team here is pretty much set on having to be in the finals,
Yeah.
and that's what you lose out with, I think, in free agency, and really just figure it out. During the course of a player's career, you're gonna either have one contract. If you're fortunate, you get two, and you got to be really everything's got to be lined up to get that third one.
Yeah. So
you kind of have an idea of where they are. That second contract, they're looking for money for themselves, and that third one, you're gonna pay top dollar for that third one. Yeah. Or you're gonna compromise because you're on the they're on their last leg. So you kind of have an idea of where they are and we did our homework in knowing where we were with the players we brought in. You just go back and look at that list and you'll see, there are guys that didn't make a Pro Bowl until they came to Buffalo. We did good.
Yeah, you did good. We're going to have Robert Royal on next week. He kind of fits into that. I remember he was
Robert Royal, one of my favorite guys, LSU.
All right. I'll tell him yes. And then secondly, now you're doing the opposite. You're consulting players and maybe how, amongst other things, how to handle a free agent visit. What are some things you would suggest that they say or don't say to increase their own leverage?
Well, here's the deal. You can't wait till that year to get your act together. You got to start that. Okay, we had talks with some clients that are active playing. Um, Everybody has their own way of doing things. Um, and I'll use, like we've had talks with just in general conversation, just like with the team, you have an exit plan at the end of the year. Okay, this is where you are. This is what you did this year. This is where you need to be in your negotiations 2 years from now. You've got to, solidify some things right here. You got to get better. One of the things that I think that teams do terribly at because of rules and so forth, it's hard. It's really hard to manage a player getting better from the last game to OTAs. That window of time is a big window where guys can get better. But it's also that time where no players are in the building. They're all out there on this is their vacation, it's their time. So it's hard to get better if you're not focused or passion driven. Restricted free agency period is about a fit or not a fit, the stability of the staff. And sometimes there are issues with ownership. Is the organization solid? Is it not?
Right.
And I still remember when we were going to be in on the Tequila Spikes deal. It was the Cincinnati Buffalo game where the fans played a real important part in Spikes coming to Buffalo because they were cheering for Spikes and he was in Cincinnati.
That's right. That resonated with him. Yeah. There we go.
So before we wrap this up, I have a very important question that I have not yet asked on the podcast. Can you give me a Don Purdy story?
Oh no.
This is my personal opinion. So I don't mean to embarrass you, Don.
Oh, go ahead. Do it. Do it.
No, Don Purdy. If Don Purdy saw me in the building when I shouldn't have been there, that meant that he was in the building also.
Yep.
That's fair. I said this more times than not. I always felt like Don Purdy was one of the more valuable parts in the organization that was underused.
Agreed.
I can't say that enough because he had so much versatility. I mean, if you're there every day and you see what goes on, you know who's who and what's what. But he was always available. He was always kind. He was always professional. He still is today. He is very thoughtful. I don't have any real stories. We just had good conversation. We enjoyed each other, and it's good.
Well, I appreciate that.
Don Purdy, he is a decent, solid person.
There you go. I've described him as annoyingly humble, and not always his own best advocate. And when I pitched him the idea of doing this podcast, I'm like, dude, you've got 25 years of NFL experience, and you've been at the ground floor of all this stuff. You've seen it all, and I think people want to hear from him, and obviously the people that he can provide access to. Like, there's a lot of good behind the scenes stuff that people aren't aware of and are interested in.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do, John. I've got a lot of John Guy stories, but one of them was, first of all, you always challenged me to kind of push past what I was doing, and I always appreciated that. I remember the morning of September 11th, 2001. And just to talk about what a learned man you are, I walked in and just after that second plane hit, and I heard you just say jihad. And I had never heard the word. I mean, it has nothing to do with football whatsoever. Of course, it turned out to be right, tragically. But I just remember, and we talk about things that had nothing to do with football, and you just somehow had knowledge of them because you were always seeking to learn about other things. And I got to say, Josh, with the podcast, you've Josh always has a way of pushing me too. But you're a go-to for me when you were there. Again, your name has come up so often, and it's just fantastic to have you on here. And we definitely, I've taken up way much more of your time than I told you we would. We're going to have this in 2 segments. So
can we play a fun game with you before we leave? We do something called the 2-minute warning. We ask 10 questions, rapid fire.
God, I'm going to fail this test already.
No, well, listen. We've had some great guests who've done well, and we've had others who haven't. So you definitely won't be the.
If you want
what's the best concert you've ever been to?
Best concert I've ever been to was I saw Swan Lake, and I think it was Baryshnikov.
That's no one else will answer that
No,
one.
you own that one. Yeah, for sure. That's a good one.
Or I can give you another one. I can give you another one.
You can.
I saw the Gypsy Kings at the Monte Carlo athletic facility at night under the stars on the water.
Oh, that works.
Sounds like an experience. Yeah. Thinking back to your Buffalo days, your favorite restaurant and what dish you enjoyed?
Well, I enjoyed all the restaurants. I love Buffalo for its restaurants and its ethnicity. But I was pretty much a regular at Tempo.
Tempo, yeah, that's right.
Did you have a favorite cartoon as a kid?
Superman.
What's the most annoying fan base in the NFL? For whatever reason.
Probably my experience would be the Raiders.
Oh, there you go. Is there a popular food but you hate it?
No. I can tell you what I don't like. I don't like pickles, cucumbers, and olives.
All right. That's a whole family of foods. I like that theme. All right. A couple more here.
Do you have a favorite sports movie?
I like The Longest Yard. I like Field of Dreams.
Burt Reynolds?
Yeah. I like the Jackie Robinson movie. My favorite movie of all time.
Sure.
It's not a sports movie. It's Casablanca.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
That's a good.
Can you drive a stick shift?
Yes.
All right. What was your first car?
First car was a 19. Oh, God. It had to be like a 60-something Phoenix Dodge with a push-button gear shift on the dash.
Wow. And then before we wrap it up, can you give us one tidbit or interesting thing about Von Miller?
Von Miller, I've a lot of people have always compared Von Miller to Derek Thomas and Von. Von Miller, athletically, not necessarily athletically, but where his mind is, and probably because he's had the advantage of technology, was I think was a far more advanced, knowledgeable football player. They're very similar. I think Von is and I happen to spend time with him at the combine, and I've gone to his summit. He is a very giving guy. He is a legitimate guy. He is very thoughtful. He is really bright. From you talk about meals, you talk about. I mean, he's got a lot of polish. He's got a lot of polish. He does. He's gonna be able to do whatever he wants to do anyway. But he takes. I mean, I was with him and people want autographs, and he goes like, "Sure." He stops. It's like, "No, I'm not right now. I'm not." He makes time for people, and he's curious. He has the right kind of curiosity, and it's an engaging curiosity.
That's great. You mentioned
if he's ever curious about coming on our podcast, let us know.
I know he's got one of his own. Yeah.
Have you invited him?
No, we haven't.
We have a connection. That would be great. You mentioned Derek. We'll let you go here, but you mentioned Derek Thomas. I happen to know that you have a special relationship with the late Derek Thomas and family. Maybe you could just tell us what that is before we.
Well, I coached Derek last 2 years of his college career, and we Derek's one of my all-time favorite people. Derek's issue was that he didn't manage his heart well. His heart was too big. He gave away too much time and energy, and it's kind of like, where do you spend time? What do you, but he gave it away. He gave it away. And when Derek's son Darius was born, he said to me, that's your responsibility.
Wow.
So with Darius has learned to swim. Darius was toilet trained. Darius, I've been to all Darius's. Darius is my godson. I talk to Darius regularly. We communicate. We have a great relationship. It was a real funny story. I can tell you this. So he was 17, and we go down. He wanted to go to Myrtle. He wanted to go to Miami Beach, South Beach. So he took a friend. They came down. They stayed with me for 2 weeks. He brought a friend with him. So I take him down to South Beach, right? So I said, okay, now Florida has a law that if you're under 17, you can't be out after 11. But I'm going to give you guys a 2:00 curfew. So we checked in a boutique hotel and right there at South Beach, and he and his friend goes out. I see him leave. And so about 12 o'clock, we had a little patio at the hotel. So I go out and just sitting because it's 12 o'clock. So I see these two guys coming back in, right? They sneaking back into the hotel. So I don't say anything. I just see them. They don't see me. So next morning I wake them up and say, hey, what did you guys do? How was it last night? They go like, oh man. He goes like, he says, these girls don't even wear tennis shoes down here. He says, those heels were high. He says, those skirts were jacked up and those cars looked like toy cars. I go like, well, and they came in about 12:30. So it was just funny. That's what he wanted to do, and they found out that they weren't ready for that game.
That's a whole different level there.
Great.
Well, with that, we'll let you go, John. Thanks so much for your time and your perspective and your stories. We really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Well, I want you to know I held my phone the whole time, so my inconsistency comes from lack of doing this.
Well, that's okay. You know what? You got a little bit of arm strength there. That's impressive to do an hour
it.
and 15 minutes holding your phone. So thanks so much. You have a good day.
Thanks so much.
All right. Talk to you later.
It's been great.
Care.
Bye.